Art Stapleton, a longtime Giants beat writer with The Record. I will say hello to Art and the rest of the beat writers on Thursday when I head to Giants camp for the first time. Art joins us here for a few minutes on Big Board Sports as we're underway now with the Ben McAdoo Giants camp. Good morning to you, Art. How are you?
Good morning, Roger. And I'm just curious, with a guy named Brady, does he have to take the first 4 weeks off of the season, or is he good to go?
Like that, Art. Very good. Actually, no time off for Brady. This guy doesn't take any. He's one of those young, hardworking guys where you can't even really get him to take 1 day off, let alone 4. You know?
Well, hey, the time off and all stuff is a myth anyway. You talk gambling and fantasy. Well, time off in the NFL is a myth.
All right, let's get to the headline from the weekend because there was quite a scare, right? OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. shaken up at practice. Let's start with that. What is the latest? Is everything okay there?
Yeah, they dodged a bullet, and I think they know it. You know, it's funny because back as a rookie, we all know Odell's issues with his hamstrings, obviously well documented, missed the first 4 games of the year. He was in a route with Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie as a rookie, and he got caught in his shoelace and pulled his hamstring, and that's kind of what triggered all that as a rookie. So yesterday when he got tangled up with Janoris Jenkins, Jenkins pretty much cleated him in the back of the leg. It was probably closer to the ankle, and I think that's why he was real sore, his left ankle, Odell, yesterday. But look, he came out, he met the media, he was, hobbling around a little bit, but I think they really consider themselves fortunate when you see, the franchise, other than Eli Manning, and again, let's be honest, Odell's sitting there at 23, and we know where Eli is, at 35. When Eli's gone, Odell is still going to be the franchise. So I think they all held their collective breath, but he should be fine. I don't expect him to practice much, the rest of this week, but maybe towards the weekend he's back out there. But I think close call, but the Giants are lucky.
Now, same practice, they dial the workload of Victor Cruz back, and everybody was wondering. So I'll ask you, are everything okay with Victor Cruz very early on in camp?
Yeah, the sense I got last night when I spoke to some people around the team and, in the know with Cruz is just the idea that, this is the plan all along, and they'll probably do it, I asked Jerry Reese that fact yesterday and McAdoo as well, the idea that, will you be doing this for certain veterans on your team that have done, are coming back from injuries and such, and he said yes. The idea is that we're following and we're charting every rep that Cruz gets, so it's kind of more noticeable. With the off day today for the players who were just going in to get treatment, I think it was a calculated move with the full practice tomorrow with full pads. It's going to be the first physical practice, as physical as, quote-unquote non-contact practices can get. I think Cruz is fine. Look, this is a long journey for him. It's 21 months without football, and I think, no one after what happened last year wants to get too optimistic because they're waiting for that other shoe to drop. But I think he's okay. He's been doing some stuff. He did 7-on-7s yesterday. I put a video up on my Twitter account yesterday of Cruz catching a pass from Eli in 7-on-7s. He weaved through traffic. You can kind of see him getting used to the bumps a little bit. But until he gets out there, come September, I think everyone is going to kind of hold their breath and wonder if Victor Cruz can actually make it all the way back to the field.
Art, you mentioned Janoris Jenkins. We know the Giants got him to solidify the defensive backfield. What's going to go on opposite of Jenkins? Because we know it looks like they're working first-round pick Eli Apple out on the outside and moving Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie to the slot. What does that mean?
I think they're just trying to find the right combination. In this league nowadays, you need to have your best corners on the field. So how are they going to match up? To me, I think the slot/nickel role is a little overblown because people want to pigeonhole it. The bottom line is, a couple of years ago, anyone who follows the Giants in the big Cowboys game at the Meadowlands, Des Bryant moved into the slot, and the Giants had to put Antrell Roll on him on the final drive, and the Cowboys drove right down the field and scored. And Antrell Roll at the time was a safety. His best coverage days were behind him. The reality is, if the Giants are going to have Apple, Jenkins, and DRC on the field at the same time, they're just going to match up with whoever may be in the slot. And I think that, if DRC ends up inside, then he's inside for a reason. He's inside because he's probably guarding or trying to cover the opposing player who is considered the best threat and fit for his skill set. So I think that's really all what it is. Don't forget about Trevin Wade. He's a good, solid number 4 guy. Makes a lot of plays, gave up some last year, but I think, he is probably best suited to the slot out of the 4 of them. So it'll be interesting to see the way they play it. And look, guys, we know injuries are going to happen. The best laid plans. DRC the last 2 years has been on and off the field, and when he's gone off, especially last year, the opposition has attacked his spot. The reality is this year, if he goes off, Eli Apple is in that spot, and that it's up to the Giants, up to Steve Spagnuolo and the other coaches to kind of get Apple up to speed that he's ready to go and he can play. Reminds me a lot of when Prince Amukamara was a rookie back in 2011. He was injured, he wasn't available, and he was playing behind some guys like Corey Webster and Aaron Ross, and in addition to Terrell Thomas, who ended up getting hurt. So this is a good problem to have. Too many corners. You never have enough corners in this league. You
do bring up Trevin Wade. I'm a big fan. I think he's a guy that doesn't get as much pub as everybody else, but he is really a solid football player out there. Art Stapleton with us, Giants beat writer. I'll be heading to Giants camp on Thursday. What am I going to notice, Art, from Ben McAdoo as opposed to what I've seen from Tom Coughlin and how he runs the show? Anything noticeable when I'm watching practice? What's your early impressions of the new head coach?
Absolutely, a lot of differences at practice, and they're noticeable from media who when you're there, Roger, you're going to notice the idea that it's music. Most of the time, there's a lot of loud music blaring, different choices, from rap to hip-hop to rock to country. It runs the gamut. One of the interesting things that Ben McAdoo does in practice now is they actually hold TV timeouts, and they'll blow the whistle and they'll have a TV timeout. And the fun part for people there in attendance is what kind of TV theme song is coming up. The other day we had Family Feud. Yesterday we had the theme to Friday Night Lights rolled into The Odd Couple. But there's a purpose behind it. And in McAdoo's philosophy, it's the idea that you don't play games straight through, so why have a practice straight through? So they'll take, TV timeout, what they would call a little bit of a break, creatively calculated in their schedule, but they'll usually have around 2 of them. Thursday will be a relatively longer practice, so we may get 3. But that's kind of one of those things that you notice, and you kind of shake your head and laugh and say TV timeout. But there's kind of a method to the madness and the humor involved with Ben McAdoo.
Art, I think this offense has real capabilities in terms of putting points on the board. I mean, if Victor is back and Odell is healthy, ready to go, the running game, and you throw in this Sterling Shepard young man. I mean, how impressive has he been? How big of a factor is Sterling Shepard going to be this season? Have you been impressed with what you've seen?
Very impressed. He is an ideal fit to be in this locker room, in this offense. He's confident but not cocky. And Odell Beckham Jr. fell in love with him this spring, so the 2 of them are inseparable on the field. You can see them together. Everything that Shepard's doing, Beckham's in his ear, and that's a good thing. We talked about yesterday with Jerry Reese about Odell and his influence on players. It comes with maturity and leadership, but, there are a lot of these young players, even though Odell is only 2 or 3 years older than them, that if Odell says something, they listen. And with Sterling, it is that relationship. And Jerry Reese even joked yesterday, if Odell looks at the ground and says, "Hey, this turf is green," the younger players on this team are going to go, "Oh, you guys hear that? Odell said the turf is green." So he has that kind of impact on his players. And I think for Shepard, he's the perfect complement in this offense. I haven't seen him drop a pass since the first pass thrown his way at rookie minicamp when he was guarded by Eli Apple in a play that I ended up putting up on Twitter, and we had video of, that he dropped it and probably was interfered by Apple, and then Apple ended up with an interception at the end of it. I haven't seen Shepard drop one since. He is definitely one of those players who you're going to be watching on Thursday.
Art, much like that other guy named Brady, I feel like the bad guy that I got to ask a downside about the Giants right now. You mentioned the defense. Jenkins, Apple in the back end. We know what they did to improve up front. How are they in the middle level of that defense? Who's going to win the battle for that middle linebacker spot? And that's really the position where we don't know a lot about with this Giants D.
It's a compelling spot that will turn out to be a pivotal spot for the Giants. And it's not just the middle linebacker, which has a heck of a competition between a veteran like Jasper Brinkley, who came in last year and kind of solidified things after John Beeson went out hurt. And I think Brinkley right now is probably in the lead, but I think this Giants team wants to play as much in a nickel as anything else. So it's going to be about versatility. Devon Kennard is their best linebacker, if healthy, and I have no qualms about saying that. You have Keenan Robinson, who came over from the Redskins in free agency. He's been working on the outside and not necessarily in the middle. Kelvin Shepard is in the middle, and everybody wants to start seeing this progression now of rookie B.J. Goodson, and can he make enough strides to be a middle linebacker on this team? And I think, there are guys like J.T. Thomas and Jonathan Casillas who are on this roster, and Mark Herzlich, another name. It's all going to come down to health and performance, and that's kind of what you want at a position at where the Giants have struggled this summer.
Do you expect a big season from JPP? What's the early thought process on Jason Pierre-Paul? We also all know what happened, 4th of July a couple of years ago.
Well, I asked Jerry Reese that specifically yesterday, the idea that, back at the Combine in February, Jerry Reese called Jason Pierre-Paul's season last year a miracle of what he was able to do. And he said right now he's watching around him and he looks like the old JPP. Now, obviously, you got to see in a game situation how he uses his right hand. He's not going to have a club on his hand, so that's a benefit. He's going to wear a glove like he normally would. They have it custom fitted. Look, JPP is going to gain from having Olivier Vernon on the other side, and there's a reason why Vernon is here making $85 million a year. He is going to be counted on. He's going to be the guy with the pressure on his back. Vernon said he doesn't think about money. You play football for football, but he knows there are expectations for him, and I think that helps JPP on the other side, because when people start adding up sacks on this team, everyone's going to want to know where Vernon is first and then where Pierre-Paul is second. And I think that says something for JPP. He hasn't been in that position in a while on this team, and I think that does matter. I think it's motivating. And, Reese said yesterday his motor's been very hot, meaning that even without the pads, JPP has been going a little bit too hard in practice. I think Ben McAdoo talked about calming him down a little bit, because JPP is a guy who has something to prove. I think on the mission is what Reese said. So it'll be interesting to see how that transpires.
Art, thanks for a few minutes. I'll see you and the rest of the beat writers on Thursday. Look forward to it. Thanks for coming on Big Board Sports.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.